Michael from Austin. In the past, you have mentioned the bad blood between CMLL and AAA. Can you explain how their feud started or how it escalated to where it is today? It's actually not that complicated, and the whole thing is pretty silly. So CMLL and AAA are the two biggest promotions in all of Mexico. CMLL is actually the oldest promotion in the world. They're over 90 years old. Okay, they go back all the way to the 1930s. Antonio Pena was the booker for CMLL, and he wanted to start pushing younger stars, right? The younger, faster guys, instead of just keeping the same old names on top. He was overruled, so he left. He wasn't happy, and he left to go start AAA. And when he left, he took half the roster with him. Most of their young talent went with him. CMLL saw this as an act of betrayal, and ever since, the two promotions have been sworn enemies. And the reason it's all so silly to me, and I've heard Conan talk about this, because Conan has tried to get them to work together, and they're just so stuck in their ways they won't do it. Conan was one of those young wrestlers who jumped from CMLL to AAA when AAA was first formed. The reason I find it so silly is because the owners of CMLL and AAA at the time are now dead. Like, it's not even owned and operated by the same people anymore when all of this happened. But it's still in the same family. Like, at least on the CMLL side, I know it's in the same family. I think it's one of the sons now that runs it. So they've just held a grudge for all of these years. I think it just comes down to pride and ego more than any actual business sense, because it doesn't make business sense. If the two sides work together, I am sure there is a lot of money to be made. There's a lot of big business to be done. But they just can't see past something that happened 30 years ago. I just find that ridiculous. Daniel from Hamburg. What was the reason behind Jesse Ventura leaving WCW in 1994? Ask Eric and Jesse. You get two different versions of what happened. Bischoff claims that he found Ventura sleeping on the job one day, and they were not going to pay him $500,000 a year to be sleeping on the job, so he fired him. Jesse being let go, though, just so happened to coincide with the arrival of Hulk Hogan. And according to Jesse, the sleeping story was bullshit. What happened was Hogan didn't want him there, because the two had heat with each other for years. And whatever Hogan wanted, he was the new guy coming in, Hogan was going to get. So according to Jesse, they just kept him home. They never flew him back in for another show. I think he had like 4 months left on his contract. They paid him, but they just never brought him back, and they let his contract lapse. I can buy that story a lot more than I can, Bischoff found him taking a nap one day and decided to fire his big star color commentator. I know Jesse and Jim Ross did not get along. JR has taken the rap for that since. He said that he just found out what Jesse was making at the time, and it was twice what he was making, and yet he was doing 3 times the amount of work. And obviously that he resented that, and that bothered him. And he takes the blame for that. Bischoff has since admitted that Hogan coming in had a lot to do with why things went south with Jesse. But, he said that, Jesse, all of a sudden, when he found out Hogan was coming in, he became very unpleasant to be around. And he was constantly negative. And then the sleeping on the job thing happened, and that was just the tip of the iceberg, and that's why he fired him, right? That's Eric's version of events. Jesse did not like Hulk Hogan. Okay, they used to be friends until Jesse found out that it was Hogan who stooged him off to Vince McMahon in 1986, right before WrestleMania 2, when Jesse tried to organize the boys in the back to form a union. Vince found out about it. He told Jesse to knock it off and don't pull that shit again. Jesse never knew who it was that stooged him off to the office until years later, when he deposed Vince McMahon in a lawsuit. It was actually over something completely unrelated. It was over royalties. And in a deposition, your lawyer can ask anything they want. He asked his lawyer, he's got Vince there, right? He goes, ask Vince who told him about me trying to form a union. And without hesitation, Vince said, Hulk Hogan told me. And from that point on, Jesse saw him as nothing more than a rat bastard, basically protecting his own spot, and he lost all respect for him. So that's where the heat comes from. I know Jesse loves to talk about Jesse. Probably loves the smell of his own farts, but I have a lot more respect for him than I do for Hulk Hogan.